and it's Antonio Giovinazzi in the all-yellow machine that is right behind him. He comes here then, did race last weekend, but raced in a very, very different car indeed. He was in a DTM car. He was in for the effectively banned driver for last weekend, Timo Scheider. Jake Dennis with a 1.7 second margin over Alexander Albon.
And there we see that is Menezes on screen. He's had a bit of a difficult year for the Carlin team. He has had a couple of podiums, some points finishes, but often he's been in the scene of accidents as well, and something that's actually been brought to the attention of the stewards and other criticism throughout this season.
Just reading a message which says car number 17 is under investigation, Julio Moreno. No more information than that.
One of the aspects of this Portimao circuit, and Dave, I'm sure you can appreciate, and something the drivers are appreciating right now, and a spin for Moreno.
So that the three-bond T-Sport car, Julio Moreno, and that is...
It's in turn one, the first turn. It's safe to say it's been a difficult season for Julio. He's struggled really at times to get the grips with that T-Sport car. I think he's really struggling to get his head around Formula 3 in a lot of instances.
Okay.
In a way, he has some inherent speed at times, but it's actually stringing it together to get consistency on his part is proving difficult at the moment.
We were just looking at Nick Cassidy a few moments ago, who's now running in P19. It gets worse for Moreno. He gets a drive-through penalty now. So. Just to bring you completely up to speed, Antonio Ferrucci then, and Antonio Giovinazzi, absolutely right, there's a real pace issue there, isn't there, because Giovinazzi now has slipped back. Okay, he's been very, very aggressive on Ferrucci ahead of him, and what I suspect Giovinazzi is doing now is just allowing the car to get back a little bit to increase that gap, just to let it cool, and he will have another attack very, very soon. Jake Dennis leads Alexander Albon by 1.7 seconds, then it's Felix Rosenqvist and Lance Stroll, then it's Marcus Palmer and Charles Leclerc.
One of the things for these drivers, because it is such a flowing circuit, it's almost like a mini Spa in the south of Portugal. It's very much a driver's circuit, so there's not that many out-and-out overtaking opportunities. So you have this situation where the drivers are kind of following each other, sussing each other, everyone else's moves out, looking for a place, looking for a mistake, but there's just not really happening. It's really forcing the drivers to work, to think about what they're doing.
Well, what Santino Ferrucci is doing now is trying to pressure Mikkel Jensen into making a mistake, because they are absolutely together. And I just wonder whether Antonio Giovinazzi is thinking about this and thinking, well, do you know what, I'm going to let those two fight ahead and I'm going to be there ready to pick up the pieces and pounce like a viper should those two come awry. So at the moment, Antonio Giovinazzi then down there in P10. Okay, in the points, but it's not enough lead by any means to maintain his position, particularly when Jake Dennis, Alexander Albon and Felix Rosenqvist and Lance Stroll occupy the top four places.
At this rate, if it stays as it is, Rosenqvist will take a huge chunk out of Giovinazzi. It'll third place if Felix stays there, would be 15 points, would be enough to bring him within 7, I believe, of Giovinazzi. And Felix has pole again later on.
Indeed.
In race 2 and race 3. So Antonio, he really needs to battle his way up the order. The issue he has, and the issue Ferrucci has, is Ferrucci's looking to get past Jensen while also trying to look out for Giovinazzi in his mirror.
He's in that classic situation, isn't he, where he's the hunter and being hunted. You know, he's going to have one eye on overtaking and one eye on defending, because he knows that Giovinazzi is there, and if half an opportunity is given to Giovinazzi as they go on the crest over the start-finish line now, the timing line they go. And we watch them down into that turn 1, 1A and turn 2 sequence.
In fairness to Ferrucci, though, he is a very aggressive driver. He likes to push, he likes to do daring moves, and sometimes, like Menezes, that can end up in incidents and occasional moments here and there. But you know what? If he sees a gap, he'll go for it, irrespective of the consequences later on.
Well, ahead of Mikkel Jensen then running in P7 is the George Russell car. And George Russell, who I had extremely high hopes of right at the beginning of the season, had a good conversation with George Russell. He was so looking forward to joining Carlin going into the FIA F3 following the BRDC F4 success last year, and of course winning the McLaren Autosport Award as well. 2015 always going to be a big year for George Russell, and he's always been there or thereabouts and has had some success, and then, you know, when I've expected that success to pirouette into yet more success, that hasn't kind of really happened.
The thing with George, he has actually done quite a good job, if you take into account he is a rookie.
Yes.
And as such, he had the first race win in Silverstone at the first weekend of the season. Although he hasn't repeated that, he is currently 5th in the championship, and looking at it on the basis that he is a rookie in a very tough championship, some would look at that and say, oh, actually, that's a pretty good job, especially considering some of the competition he's up against.
This is crucial, just taking a look at that. Alexander Alban is now turning the wick up a bit on Jake Dennis.
And as is Felix Rosenqvist. As
yes.
you see, Alban is personal best this lap. Dennis, he's rising to the challenge. He's going for a personal best this lap as well. Felix Rosenqvist, he's also there. He did an all-time best in Sector 2. So it's tightening up a bit. It was 3 seconds. Okay, the gap between the top three is only down to 2.7. But you know what? We're getting to the midpoint of this race. This is where you actually really need to apply the pressure, because as one of the engineers was telling me after practice yesterday,
yes,
tyre wear here is very heavy. And we could see in the latter laps of this race it begin to drop off away. Hancocks aren't really known for falling away in an aggressive manner at these races, but if you start to see that grip just trickle away, maybe ebb away from the top layer of the tyre, it could open opportunities to actually make moves. And you know what? That's where Giovinazzi comes into it. If he's been clever, if he's actually
protected those tyres,
biding his time and protecting his tyres, he could see opportunities fold up ahead, open up in front of him, as other tyres, other competitors lose their grip.
And we watch that very man as we speak, Antonio Giovinazzi then, as over the crest he comes. There is Antonio Giovinazzi, and a very likeable young man. Many conversations with him over the course of last weekend in Moscow, and feel that he may have come away from there just a little bit disappointed. Certainly was put in a creditable performance, and I think his disappointment will be brought about by virtue of the fact that it has been sort of fairly announced that the Audi lineup in DTM is going to remain unchanged last year. So if he felt that there was a potential opportunity for him to find a DTM seat, that seems less than likely now. So now the gap between Jake Dennis and Alexander Alban is 1.5 seconds. A further 1.5 back to Felix Rosenqvist. You can see them as they're on screen, and then Lance Stroll is P4. Okay, now, Lee, we are beginning to see some black and white flags issued for disrespecting of track limits. Now, the first of those goes out to the Matt Rao car, and the second one goes to Ryan Tvita.
Yeah, and we've seen over the course of this race in the background. Ooh, is Russell lost?
No, that's Tatiana Calderon.
That is, yes, Tatiana Calderon with Boccolacci, Beretta just ahead. Tatiana Calderon, it's been a difficult year for Tatiana. She had quite a solid season in 2014, was a multiple point scorer with Mucca, and she's gone to Carlin this year. It just hasn't really come together. She's not scored any points yet. I do remember at the end of last year she was testing GP3 for a couple of teams in Abu Dhabi, opted for a third season in Formula 3.
Yes.
And in essence, because she had scored so often in 2014, a lot of people really were probably expecting a little bit more, and it's just unfortunate that it hasn't really happened. The size of the grid here has expanded. It was only around 26, 27 cars last year. We're up to 34 just this weekend alone. I think started the season with 35 cars. So the gaps to the top for Tatiana are actually relatively the same, but it's just that there's more cars ahead of her.
Black and white flags continuing to come out for track limits now. Pietro Fittipaldi, also Sergio Sette Camara being warned as well. And just a few moments ago on the message screen, it was Antonio Giovinazzi. Now, of course, we're nearly at the half stage of this race, and we're expecting his charge to come in perhaps the second half of this race from his current P10 position, as going past George Russell.
That's Jensen, isn't it?
Mikkel Jensen has managed to find his way past the George Russell car. So I was going to go on to say that Giovinazzi is just going to have to take care, and we can see him at the back of this pack now. All of a sudden, George Russell is really under pressure now from Santino Ferrucci. So there is Ferrucci in the orange colours of the K-Styler 24 Mucca Motorsport, and Antonio Giovinazzi, of course, is going to be right behind as well. And so to the outside, and this is down into turn 5. It's a long way around the outside here. George Russell's got the inside line, but if Ferrucci is prepared to stick with it, and Ferrucci is prepared to stick with it, that was a good move.
That was absolutely fantastic, although the purist in me might question whether Ferrucci went over the white lines.
Oh.
But But it
To
was
heck with it.
Yes, it was a very good move, and that's what I'm talking about when I say Ferrucci's aggressive. He will go for that move that many other drivers won't necessarily do. And you know what, Russell, I think he's beginning to struggle just a small bit. We saw in the last couple of laps his middle sectors were beginning to slow down. He thinks he might be struggling a bit, but it'll be interesting to see what his teammate Antonio Giovinazzi does.
Absolutely. Well, now you can see that those two Mucca cars are all way up the road, aren't they? Which lends credence to your argument that perhaps Mucca have got this circuit sussed a little bit better in terms of pace-wise than maybe the Carlin team has. Although Giovinazzi is pressuring his teammate now, I thought Giovinazzi would be right on the back of Ferrucci and be able to take advantage of that aggressive move from Santino Ferrucci, but he wasn't. So Antonio Giovinazzi is tucked in then behind the George Russell all-blue car.
I wonder as well if Portimao and Giovinazzi is going for a move. He's got a little bit of draft coming out the final corner as they go side by side down the start-finish straight into turn one, and he has made the move. Although Russell didn't defend that as maybe aggressively as maybe other teams would, but you know what? That move was coming a long way in advance. I think George Russell really is struggling. His sector times are really beginning to fall off, and he's in the mid to late 143s. Actually, that last lap was in the 145s. Is that a sign of a problem, or he's really actually burnt out his tyres? But still, it was a move that Giovinazzi needed to make. And to get, well, it's 2 points. It's only 2 points for ninth.
That could be crucial.
He needs to make those kind of moves.
What will be very, very interesting now, and I don't subscribe to the fact that I don't think George Russell has been hugely aggressive, so therefore I'm not convinced that tyre wear is the issue. I think it's more potentially an issue, although Giovinazzi has now got away from him, so maybe you are right, but it's going to be interesting to see how quickly.
And he's got, Russell now has Maxi Gunther.
Well, I was going to say how quickly Gunther can get on terms with George Russell now.
And Gunther is another very odd case, as it were. He showed quite a lot of pace. We saw him get podiums at Pau. He took a win later on in the year at Norrisring, with that race 2 at Norrisring. But since then, he's completely fallen away. He's only scored points on one occasion since then. He had a 7th place at Zandvoort in July, but it's been slim pickings for Maxi Gunther since then. It's really it's not come together for him in the latter part of the season.
Whilst we've been enjoying the excitement of George Russell falling prey, then Jake Dennis just cements his position at the moment.
Ferrucci and Jensen coming down to start-finish straight.
Ferrucci's he's done this.
And he has. Fantastic move.
That is brilliant.
Again, just getting and you know what? Ferrucci, he seems to be very aggressive coming out of that final corner. Really takes it on. Well,
sure, she didn't see that.
But you know what? He has his foot on it through the final corner. Really gets under the rear wing, and he forces the issue. He's giving his opponents the option. Look, I'm going to make this move. And you know what? Jensen did give him a fair whack, pushed him right across the track.
Here it is in replay, how it was set up. Now look, you know, he defends initially, doesn't he? And then,
but I think you know, see, Mikkel Jensen, Santino Ferrucci, they know each other. They're actually good friends.
Yeah.
But with that kind of knowledge, you also kind of go, I know Santino's going to go for that move. I know he's going to push. He's going through whether he likes it or not.
He is absolutely, totally committed, isn't he? Committed. You know, not only was it aggressive, but he had to stay absolutely committed to it, as we're hearing that Michele Beretta got a drive-through penalty, Lee?
That's not a shock.
Ooh. How cutting of you. As we watch, whilst I let him wallow in the corner in apology, we watch Jake Dennis then, who is now, he's increasing his margin over Alexander Albon by 1 point. It's now 1.8, the margin between Jake Dennis and Alexander Albon. There, the top two, as you can see. Well, as he crosses the timing line, increases still further, another couple of tenths, 2.03. Then it's Felix Rosenqvist, then it's Lance Stroll is P4, Marcus Pommer P5, Charles Leclerc is not really making the moves that perhaps we expected. The man that is Santino Ferrucci P7, and then Mikkel Jensen P8. There's Giovinazzi and George Russell rounding out the top 10. George Russell now coming under pressure once again. So now this was the point I was going to make, is it's going to be very, very interesting to see how quickly it is that George Russell does come under pressure once again from another one of those Mucca Motorsport cars.
I'm also beginning to wonder if... as well if maybe the Muccas have set themselves up for just a small bit of extra downforce for that middle sector.
Do you think?
Possibly, because it's the Carlins do seem to, especially with Russell, seems to have been struggling. That's where he's actually beginning to lose the time more than anywhere else, is that middle sector.
It's Michaela Beretta then with a drive-through penalty, also a drive-through penalty for Raghunathan as well. So a couple of drive-through penalties now, and all of this is, you know, these track limits. You know, you get warned. If you ignore that warning, you get smacked with a rod of iron over your wrist, don't you?
Well, we have had the issue where drivers were, and there you go again. You know, they've altered turn one. So they're going to be using that chicane, the turn 1A chicane, and now they're just driving clean out into the green area in turn 2. You need to absolutely slam down on those kind of issues. It's not acceptable to just kind of to keep going over the track limits and then argue later on, well, everyone else is doing it.
No, absolutely. Interestingly, another one that's being warned is someone that is proven to be quite aggressive out there, and that's Max Günther. So Max Günther got to watch his step, and also
Andy Chang as well,
he is being warned also. Okay, so it's Dennis Alban, Rosenqvist, and Stroll. Max Pommer P5, Charles Leclerc is P6, then it's Santino Ferrucci, and yeah, you can see there on screen there are places.
Oh my word, that is Randy, I believe.
So absolutely
with Jeffrey, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, that's aggressive.
That's more than aggressive. So Alessandro Lorandi and.
But you know what? It's ultra close racing. There's so much criticism at times that there's not enough overtaking in Formula 3. There's not enough action. And sometimes these are the lengths that some drivers have to go to actually do it. He's pulled out, he's made a move, and it is Jeffrey who...
He's squeezing him.
Yeah.
More than squeezing him.
Now, that's going to be the issue. That might be something that the stewards will look at. And, you know what, I almost hope they don't actually do anything, because it's a racing incident. Both of them have come out the other side. And, you know, the overtake and then retake is move through turn 1, turn 2.
So Jake Dennis then continues his quest right at the front, then untroubled by Alexander Alban, who equally has done a good job in P2, but has never really... Well, there was just one occasion, perhaps at the latter stage of the first third of this race, where he was beginning to reduce the gap down to Jake Dennis, but that's certainly not the case now. If anything, I think Felix Rosenqvist is getting just a little bit closer to Alex Alban. Whether he can, over the final 7 or 8 laps that we have left to run in this, whether he can... perhaps think that P2, of course, is going to bank him more points than P3, and whether he thinks he's going to go for it, be interesting to see. There you can see how Rosenqvist has taken a couple of tenths out.
In one sense, it's almost a great shame, because Jake Dennis, he's been driving absolutely superbly. He's been consistent, he's been quick, just gingerly pulling away. He's not pushing too hard, but he's keeping a very good pace. Actually, it's only tenths at a time that he's actually pulling away from Alexander Albon, but it is a masterclass on how to drive a Formula 3 car very, very quickly around this circuit. And I'm not going to give the commentators curse on him, but you know, he's been leading every step of the way with absolute ease as such. We're not seeing it because the action's elsewhere.
You're right. He is going to be up against some backmarking traffic very, very soon, though, in the likes of other cars that are out there and much, much further down the order. So Jake Dennis will be up against some of those cars in due course as we watch the Lance Stroll car. And there is the car that we saw in action just a few moments ago, Lorandi with
it's Nabil Jeffrey, isn't it? Yeah. It's an exciting battle for 18th place.
Yeah, it is, and actually, you know, yeah, it's top 10 that we're interested in terms of points, but there has been action going on throughout, and I mean, it's not that, you know, it's been a race that you and I have had plenty to talk about, and we've still got 6 laps to come.
And this is the thing, you know, even though this is a battle for the lower positions, these guys are fighting hard.
Yes.
They're pushing every way. They're looking for gaps. They're looking for mistakes. They're looking for moments that they can just shoot something down the inside, as we saw going into turn 1 a few moments ago. And it's Jeffrey keeping the inside line as Lorandi.
He was going to have a go, but it wasn't going to pay off. But
I think what he's trying to do, he's going to the outside. He's trying to get himself in a position to take the inside of the next corner along. They're pushing.
Raoul Hyman is going to be on the back of those two in a moment, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's going to be an opportunity perhaps there for him to take advantage if these two come to grief as they continue their battle. They round the final turn and head turn 15 and head over the timing line right now, and you can see Hyman getting very, very close now.
And again, I think Lorandi's going to actually do it this time. He's got a gap ahead, and Hyman will he dive bomb the inside of Jeffrey. Lorandi is ahead. and Jeffrey keeps to the outside line, which becomes the inside line of turn 1A. Keeps Simon behind, but he's lost that position to Durandi, who goes off course, as does Jeffrey again.
To my right-hand side is our third race official, keeping an eye on those track limits for us. There is our race leader, Jake Dennis, then, who has done a sterling job and is continuing to say, he's just done a personal best in Sector 1. And, you know, just a few moments ago, we were talking about tyres are going to go off a cliff potentially at the end of this race, and we're reaching the closing stages of it now, and JD does a personal best in Sector 1.
You know what, the thing for Jake Dennis is he probably is going to have fresher tyre than most drivers at the end of this race, because he's been untroubled.
Yeah,
he's not had to defend. He's not had to take extra manoeuvres. He's not been forced into a situation where he's actually burning through his Hankook rubber any more than everyone else. He's actually, because he's in clean air and he's got no one behind, he's able to drive to his pace, to the car's pace, and actually make it consistent.
What are the teams going to do when Antonio Giovinazzi comes in from P9, if he finishes P9 at the conclusion of this race? What can Carlin do to try and increase the downforce, or do make whatever, because this race has proven to them that there is a deficit to the other cars?
It's difficult because there's no more practice sessions, there's no warm-up, there's no morning warm-up or anything like that in Formula 3. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Because Giovinazzi, because he's not necessarily starting up front in the other two races, the problem is, do you keep the same setup and maintain the status quo, or do you take a risk on setup, maybe hit the jackpot, but also maybe go completely the wrong way and end up falling down the field and not score points at all?
Well, we're just seeing Jake Dennis get past the what was effectively the back-marking Julio Moreno car. Alexander Albon and Felix Rosenqvist, there you can see P2 and P3, and seesawing a bit in terms of the margin between the two of them. And perhaps we've not given enough credit to Alexander Albon here in car number 21, who has done as sterling a job as Jake Dennis, albeit in P2 rather than P1. But he hasn't been troubled by Felix Rosenqvist, and therefore has maintained an incredible pace. All right, he's not been able to encroach on the immense lead that Jake Dennis has, but he's done a very, very creditable job in P2.
He absolutely has. And you know what? This will be an important P2 for Alexander. He's only had a few podiums this year. He is a Lotus Junior driver.
Absolutely.
And of course, the Lotus is the manager of the Gravity Lotus Junior team is here this weekend. And he's there to impress. He wants more results. He gets Signature, bear in mind as well, they're only back in Formula 3 this year. So again, they're also getting used to being back in Formula 3 as well. And Alexander Albon, as well as his teammate Dorian Boccolacci, they're not just driving for themselves, they're also gaining information for the team.
Of course, feeding that back. Drive-through penalty now for Tatiana Calderon. Another Carlin driver, car number 9, gets a drive-through penalty, and that will be for non-respect of track limits as we watch Antonio Giovinazzi, then championship leader, who is currently running down there in P9 with a car that clearly does not have the pace of some others. No question about that. And that was the backmarking car of Julio Moreno, the 3.1 Sport car that Jake Dennis was able to get past untroubled. But of course, that now being passed by Alexander Albon, and will be Felix Rosenqvist and Lance Stroll and Marcus Pommer and Charles Leclerc that will also have to get past that backmarking car as battles continue. There is Tatiana Calderon, as we said, has been given a drive-through penalty, and once those drive-through penalties are notified, they have to be taken within 3 laps.
Interesting thing about this race, now that we are coming into the final sector of this race, Dennis, as I said yesterday, he's on the very periphery of this championship battle. He was, of course, some 80-odd points behind with 9 races to go. And we think to ourselves, well, that's just too much. That's just too far a battle. But you know what? If he wins today, and it looks like he may do so, Rosenqvist, he picks up 15 points if he finishes third. That still keeps him second in the championship, but it's Giovinazzi's only 2 points. If he stays ninth, that brings him to 335.5 points. Dennis takes up 25, brings him to 273. It's still a long margin, but all of a sudden, it's maybe not quite as impossible as we once thought at the start of this weekend.
Maybe so. Another drive-through penalty, that goes to car number 29, which is Rd9, the Van Amersfoort driver, who incidentally was here being looked after by Karun Chandok. Just yesterday I had a conversation with Karun in the paddock. He was here for the day and was heading back to Monza for this weekend, but offering some support to Rd9, the Van Amersfoort driver. And I also had a conversation with Fritz Van Amersfoort, who, to be truthful, Lee, he threw his hands in the air in terms of trying to unlock the magic button for this circuit, which they, Van Amersfoort and Fritz freely admitted, they'd not done at that stage.
It's interesting as well, because we talk sometimes about all these junior categories that are spec championships, and of course at Red Bull Ring a few weeks back, both Carlin and Prema showed up at new barge boards with kind of double ridges on the lower end to help direct airflow to the rear, to the bottleneck of the car, the coke bottle of the car. Other teams have done that as well. Van Amersfoort haven't, and the team say they actually did run it. They ran it in a CFD, yes, but they didn't think it actually delivered the necessary improvements for it to run it. Yet they are still struggling. Leclerc he's not fallen off the pace. He's struggled a bit sometimes since his big crash at Zandvoort that time. So it's just not happening for Van Amersfoort at the moment, and they're not scoring the big points that Prema and Carlin are.
So there we can see Nick Cassidy and Gustavo Menezes. Talking of big crashes, Gustavo Menezes at Spa. I think I'll ever forget that.
He was a lucky boy. He showed me his helmet actually from that race weekend. He's keeping the helmet as a kind of souvenir.
What a souvenir to keep. So as we watch this battle then, which becomes almost three abreast into turn one.
Oh, and it's a clash. It's Callum Milot and Nick Cassidy into turn one, and I think Cassidy's day is done early.
That is the end of that, and well, Gustavo Menezes it was that was not involved in that. Callum Milot, the Carlin driver, made contact with Nick Cassidy. That's the end of Nick Cassidy for this race, right in the closing stages of this race. Gustavo Menezes running in P15.
It's unfortunate for Callum Milot, because he had a very poor start, because he had a pretty good weekend. He had a pretty good couple of days in testing, ran very quickly in practice, but here, this is not how you do it. I'd say Callum.
Would you?
Yeah.
Do you not think Cassidy turned in on him?
No, I think Cassidy probably held the line and was just enough ahead of Callum going into that bend. I think Callum may have taken the corner just a little bit too tight of an angle, and just didn't have the stopping power to avoid Nick. It's unfortunate, but you know what? Nick's not in the championship. He's here to fill in for the fourth car for Prema. You know what? He's done a good job. It's unfortunate that it would be more interesting to see how he would have done had that start gone well. But he dropped down to 20th, climbed up as far as 16th. This is not a track you can really overtake on in a Formula 3 car in the best of days. He's done a solid job.
He has, and also having done an incredibly solid job as we follow him on the final lap now as he heads down towards turn 5. This is Jake Dennis, who has not put one foot wrong. Felix Rosenqvist now really is on the back of Alexander Albon, but I fear, Lee, that he's left it too late for this challenge. Yeah. Maybe not, but he is certainly there, and he's going to harry Alexander Albon all the way to the checkered flag in the hope that Albon will perhaps make a mistake. Don't think he will, but Jake Dennis has done a phenomenal job. Absolutely no question about that. There's P2, there is P3. Felix Rosenqvist then is within a car length of Alexander Albon. I don't think Albon's going to make a mistake. I really don't. He's spent the entire race at a very, very good pace and has maintained that gap back to Felix Rosenqvist. It's only now that Felix Rosenqvist, perhaps with just a little bit more life left in those tyres, is thinking, I'm going to have a last dash effort at trying to secure the second step on the podium rather than the third, but I think he has left it too late. Untroubled is Jake Dennis, the Racing Steps Foundation driver who has just driven a masterclass of the Portimao circuit and heads towards the checkered flag and takes win here. Round 25 of the FIA Formula 3 Championship. Jake Dennis absolutely delighted. Albon takes P2. Rosenqvist takes P3. Good drive from Lance Stroll to take P4. Then it's Marcus Palmer P5. Charles Leclerc will take P6. The incredible Racing Santino Ferrucci takes P7, and it's Jensen that takes 8. Giovinazzi then not able to better his P9 position, and George Russell rounds out the top 10.
Absolutely faultless drive by Jake Dennis as well. That's his 6th win of the season. And that is the unfortunate case with Jake Dennis this season. He has won 6 races, but it's some non-scores and the occasional...
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, he'll rue his bad luck in places, won't he?
Absolutely, absolutely. But, you know what, I think he's really proven his worth this year. Whether he stays for a 3rd season or goes on to move something else, we'll only find out soon enough.
Yes. The incident between Nick Cassidy and Callum Isla is going to be reported to the stewards. And that came right at the very, very end of that race. And Nick Cassidy and Callum Isla coming together. And there is the Nick Cassidy car right at the centre of the screen now. Unfortunately, Nick Cassidy not able to finish this race, as Lee has suggested. He is here, though, really to provide information back to the team. And from his normal steed, which is in Japanese F3. But the car's on the way back to the... paddock now, and well, what a brilliant drive. Supremely impressed with Jake Dennis, the winner of race 1 for Portimao Power Team. I remember having a conversation with Jake Dennis, and you know, I was concerned at how well he was going to work with the Portimao Power Team. Yeah, for reasons no other than perhaps language difference, but he actually said he's very, very comfortable there, very comfortable indeed. So the points, it's going to be 333.5 for Antonio Giovinazzi. 335.5.
It's 329.
So he's gained 2 points, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's 329.5 for Rosenqvist.
Still at the top, but what's the margin to P2 now?
6 points.
Just explain, as the cars are making their way back and we're looking at Jake Dennis, and I said we would do this right at the beginning of the programme. Why on earth have we got a 0.5 in the points?
We've actually had... We've had three races this year which have finished before the halfway mark. There was the incidents at Spa, or not Spa, Monza for races 2 and 3, where the stewards ended those races early because of there were so many incidents and crashes on track. But because they finished before the halfway mark, or the 75% mark, only half points were awarded. We had that situation in Red Bull Ring on the Sunday for race 3, which was rained out effectively. They had 4 laps under the safety car. Again, finished after only 4 laps, only half points awarded. Races 2 and 3 at Monza, you can understand they were stopped early because so many incidents, but one kind of just hopes that 4 laps under the safety car at Red Bull Ring doesn't end up deciding the points.
It could be significant. It really could. Okay, here's Alexander Albon then making his way out of his car, the Lotus Junior. As Lee mentioned, we see Felix Rosenqvist pull in, and we await the Jake Dennis car. But Alexander Albon is out of the car. He'll be jolly, jolly pleased with that. Gets congratulated.
That's Gwen there in the blue shirt. He is the Lotus junior team manager.
Yes.
And he's going to be very impressed with that performance. It was a good, positive result, and it's really something that Alexander definitely needed.
Yes. Here is the race winner, though. What a star you are, Jake Dennis. Faultless drive. Portimao team are delighted with him, and René Rossin there is straight away giving him congratulations. Well done, Jake Dennis. Supreme drive. Interesting haircut as always, which you will see on the podium shortly. And as I saw him walk into his car, and he offers congratulations to Alexander Albon,
and Felix Rosenqvist there.
The difference there. Now, that is what I was going to say, is how tall Jake Dennis is in comparison to some of the other drivers, including, I was going to say Charles Leclerc, but a better example is Felix Rosenqvist, as we see Leclerc walking out now of the garage. If you get the opportunity, and Jake Dennis and, as they're being weighed, and Felix Rosenqvist are side by side, and we'll see that up on the podium in a few moments, but of course the podium places actually diminish the height difference somehow. But Jake Dennis is a tall boy, isn't he? But
I'll tell you something. That is actually a very, very key point, because during the test days here, the winds were so heavy. The taller drivers were actually complaining they were gaining buffeting on the helmet as they went down the start-finish straight and on the back straight.
Well, Jake Dennis puts his #1 baseball cap on. Is once again congratulated there by Mr. Rossin, the head of the Portimao Power Team, and all the race engineers there as well. Jake Dennis takes P1. round 25 of the FIA Formula 3 European Championship. Here is the race in full. Then Jake Dennis takes the win from Alexander Albon, P2. Felix Rosenqvist is P3. Lance Stroll, P4. Marcus Pommer then takes P5. Charles Leclerc for Van Amersfoort Racing, P6. Then it's Santino Ferrucci, the very lively Santino Ferrucci, that took P7. Mikkel Jensen, P8. Antonio Giovinazzi, P9. And George Russell, the Carlin driver, takes P10, so he's in the points. As the second page sees Sergio Sete Camara, P11. Pietro Fittipaldi, then it's Sam McLeod, Maximilian Gunter, Gustavo Meneses, Callum Eilert, Alessio Lorandi, Nabil Jeffrey, Raul Hyman, and Alexander Sims, then, who started from the pit lane, ends up taking P20 for the new high-tech GP team. There's Matt Solomon, Dorian Boccolacci, Ryan Tvita, Chang Rao, Gong Beretta, Arjun Maini, P28, Tatiana Calderon, and Raghu Nathan, then P29 and P30, bearing in mind those being affected by the drive-through penalties. And Julio Moreno and Nick Cassidy, of course, didn't finish the race. So there we have race 1 of 3 this weekend at the Portimao circuit here in the Algarve, done and dusted. And as I said earlier, and I make no apology for it, a masterclass in F3 driving from Jake Dennis. Brilliant.
I will say, though, that, okay, we will look back on this and say it was not the greatest F3 race we've ever seen, but you know what? There were battles going on throughout the race. The gaps were maintained quite closely.
So here we see the highlights package then, as Jake Dennis, well, he was advantaged, of course, by that situation right at the start where the Cassidy car didn't get away, but actually from that point on, he had absolutely no problems as he continued to just build up that margin. There were lots of fights going on, and there were fights that were going on throughout the race. And
that was a very important start for Felix Rosenqvist. Those first few corners, to take him ahead of Lance Stroll, to get him ahead of Leclerc and Pommer, were very, very key to the final result.
So Jake Dennis is on the top step of the podium, as you can see, and here comes Alexander Albon then. And Felix Rosenqvist will be next to join us. He's the shorty of those two, there's no question about that. Needs a stepladder damn near to shake Jake Dennis's hand. And so the 1, 2, 3 on the podium there, Prema Power Team, of course, taking the team honours. And we'll be pausing shortly for the national anthem. National anthem plays out for Jake Dennis then. And trophy presentation time. Paolo Pinheiro makes the trophy presentation to Jake Dennis, who is delighted with that. Prema Power Team, jolly impressive trophies here at the Algarve circuit, it has to be said. Of course, the circuit would be delighted to see the Formula 3 single-seaters here. Junior Kakera then, trophy presentation to Alexander Albon. And he, of course, impressing in front of Lotus Junior manager here this weekend as Felix Rosenqvist receives his P3 trophy. So they will assemble for photographs and hold their trophies aloft. All try and muscle in on the top step of the podium. Next race to come a little bit later today from the Portimao circuit, where the sun hasn't really broken out in terms of unbroken sunshine yet, but we live in hope that it might. As the celebrations start on the podium now, and Jake Dennis wins that race as well. He's the first to get the champagne spraying up there on the podium, and he makes sure that his Prema engineer gets a a full head of it, which is more than could be said for his hair. So there they are, on their way off the podium now. And, of course, 2 podiums, as always, in FIA Formula 3, because 2 championships, aren't there? There is the main championship, then a rookie championship as well. Christoph Hever doing the work there in terms of readying the podium for the next one. So we await that, and I'll tell you what, I'm so looking forward to the next race already.
And you know what, Dave? This is a good track for Formula 3.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, it may not produce the most amazing racing in the world, but you know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for these drivers, and that's what Formula 3 is supposed to be about.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is.
This is a championship that is supposed to be preparing drivers for their future, for the next level of motorsport. It's supposed to be preparing them to go on to F1, DTM, GP2.
If I may be so bold, it does it. It's not supposed to. Just last year, you know, let's not lose sight of the fact we saw a driver elevated from Formula 3 European Championship straight into a points-paying seat in Formula 1.
And Max,
by way of Max Verstappen, who
Max
has
is doing
not.
a wonderful job.
Isn't he? Isn't he?
And we're seeing other drivers who export from Formula 3, like Esteban Ocon in GP3, do very, very well. Rafael Marcello's a race winner in GP2. Alex Lynn, who's a Williams reserve driver in F1, who's done multiple free practice sessions. He's doing very well in GP2 as well. So.
Okay, let's do the rookie podium then, and Alexander Albon, double bubble for him, isn't it? And good time for him to be doing this as he goes to the top step of the rookie podium. Charles Leclerc will be on the podium as well. So the rookie podium completed now. Lance Stroll, Alexander Albon, and Charles Leclerc all up there. And national anthem to play for Alexander Albon. Well, the national anthem rather drowned out by the GT cars that are on track right now. It's the GT Sports Club, their free practice session as Alexander Albon receives yet another trophy. Somewhat less elaborate, the rookie trophies, than the race trophies, but nonetheless, it's another one to add to his burgeoning mantelpiece, it has to be said. Lance Stroll, who has, he impressed in the testing, didn't he? He was fastest. He was the first driver that was fastest in the free test sessions, or in the official test sessions here at the Portimao circuit. And Lance Stroll then. And then we see Charles Leclerc.
He's a bit downcast.
Always looks subdued. He always, I've said it in comms every single Formula 3 race. Charles Leclerc always looks subdued. So there we have it, the podium for the Rookie Championship. We've seen a good race from the FIA Formula 3 European Championship, and the next race comes a little bit later this afternoon. Please make sure you join us for that. From Lee and from myself, bye-bye for now.